All right. Akash, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Carson, hope you're doing well too.
I am. I'm doing good. I got my coffee
Yeah, I have my water.
and I'm ready to go. I didn't take any notes, and this topic is such a big one that I feel like I should always have like a list of things on hand because whenever I talk about the topic, I always like later think like, oh, I wish I would have like thought of this element. But I figure this will be such a friendly, relaxed conversation. I don't have to treat it like a debate or anything.
Sure.
But yeah, where would you like to start off?
Uh, I would like to start off by knowing your position on abortion, and then I can state my position, and we can go ahead from there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to describe my position without the reasonings for my position. I guess my current position is something like I I think abortions, as far as any that involve um, killing of a of an unborn human, I think practically all of them I would want to not happen. Um, I don't think I would fight too hard to have it to have the laws not be in favor of very early stage abortions. But I think that's only me kind of giving in to what's kind of wanted. I think my actual, until I get talked into it, my actual stance is that I just think they should all not be allowed. But I know a lot of people refer to it as abortion when it comes to any form of removing the second person in there. And so if the fetus is dead and you have to surgically remove it, that'll be referred to as abortion. Obviously, I'm not well, I think it's obvious. I'm not referring to that. I'm not referring to ectopic pregnancies where the yeah, you know. Well, I guess for anybody
Yeah,
that's watching that doesn't know, ectopic pregnancies would be where the fertilized egg gets stuck in the fallopian tubes, I believe, and therefore it is known that it will never get to where it needs to get to, and so it's only going to harm the mother if you leave it. So yeah, I'm not
that's
referring
right.
to any of those. Um, and so that's my stance on abortion itself, without my reasonings. Yeah.
Cool. Fine. So I will state my position that which has always been my position. I've never had to think about it twice, which is that abortion should be freely and non-restrictively be available to everyone who chooses the abortion. Uh,
Mhm.
I define abortion as the medical termination of pregnancy, right? I We can talk about whether it's killing of an unborn human or a person. Those are, I mean, those will that will go into the reasons, but that is my position as
Okay. Okay. So I'm against pretty much all of them, and you're for pretty much all of them. Um,
I believe the choice
legally. Yeah.
legally, yes.
Yeah.
I believe the abortion services should be available to all women. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So let's go over a couple things first. So one, I think a lot of people get hung up on the semantics, but I think it's good to just get them out of the way. So
Yeah.
in my mind, I mean, so humans create words so we figure out how to communicate with each other. So we can call anything anything we want. So the idea of me calling something a human, somebody else could not, but it's easier to figure out like why we do so. In my mind, it makes sense. So I would not call sperm a human. That sperm is of human DNA. It might be living at one moment, but it is not a human. Same thing with an egg. Same thing with my skin cells, my blood. My blood is not a human. As soon as sperm and the egg come together, and I believe what is referred to as singamy. You can correct me if I don't know too much about. So singamy would be the process of the combining, which happens somewhat simultaneously with conception and or maybe shortly after. But anyways, some form of a unique on its own. Um, oh, I'm echoing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
that's my bad. Mm.
That's right. Anyway, so The combining of the two gametes to make a new individual, I think it's fair, whether we want to say that it deserves rights or not, or that anybody can terminate anything inside of them. I think it's fair to call that a human. What are your thoughts?
For the purposes of this conversation, I am willing to grant that uh, a fertilized zygote, that's what it's called, after
Hmm.
fertilization.
Yeah.
If you want to consider that a human, I'm absolutely fine with it.
Okay. Yeah, I think it could be interesting to go over why maybe you would not call it a human, but we don't need to, because it might just get in the way. I guess we can save that for a different talk. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we will run into the same issue while talking about the fetus, right? Do we have to call it a baby, or call him or her or they a baby?
Mhm.
So these are the issues where people might point out that this is right or wrong. So if we get that out of the way, then
Yeah.
we can, yeah,
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And people might be offended in the same way that I call animals it. I call
yeah,
babies it, especially if they're
yeah.
unborn. Anything I haven't talked to is an it to me. But anyways, okay. So I consider that a human, and I have a handful of different stances of why I think it should be protected. When it comes to morals, my baseline is, I believe my baseline is sentience. Once sentience is reached, that's when I think moral consideration is deserved. The reason I don't think a human should be aborted before sentience is something like this. When so humans have a very limited options of how they live. You either live out in nature where it's survival of the fittest, or you convince other humans to start a society. Hopefully, you have laws and you can create a government, and you can have these laws protect you. So, in a society, I think that human life should be valued to the furthest extent, because that is the most important thing we could ever want as living people, aside from people willing to like sacrifice themselves or whatever. For the most part, we want to survive. So the idea, this is why I'm against the death penalty, because the idea of taking one's life, especially when you could be wrong about their actions, I think as long as you can contain them and keep them from committing the illegal acts, you should not kill them. So same thing with the furthest extent of once a human has started their life, I think we should protect them at all costs. If I was out in nature outside of a society that I was part of, and I came across an abortion, I would not care in any way. If I But also, if I came across a mother that thought they couldn't feed their 1 year old and was killing their 1 year old, I would not intervene. But if I came across an adult killing an adult, I would intervene. I would, if I witnessed the killing, I would kill the adult that killed the other adult. But if I witnessed the mother killing a 1 year old, I would not.
Just to
So
make your example clear, you meant the mother is killing the, or leading to the death of the child through neglect.
say that again.
In that example where you said that you wouldn't intervene if a mother is not feeding her child,
Oh no, if she is actually killing.
actually killing.
Yeah.
Is there
And
any
this is,
specific reason, yeah, why you wouldn't intervene in that case?
well, because I would have to be consistent, and if it happened to me every day, I would just be stuck with, at the end of the year, 365 children. And so it's possible I could intervene initially and maybe keep a kid for myself. But I feel like when you're part of a society where the society could have a goal of like creating an adoption center, or something where the government could help out. So then you have these opportunities. But when you're out in nature and you don't have a society, I think it's complicated. The reason I would intervene or kill somebody that killed an adult is that would be essentially for my own protection. I would not want to come across that person, and I would not want other people to have to come across that murderer. But somebody committing this act because they cannot keep that child alive. So if you have a 1 year old, this 1 year old cannot keep themselves alive. I would rather them be euthanized than to suffer. And I'm sure there's a possibility I would try to take care of one if I could. But if in this hypothetical I don't have the means to take care of it, then I'd be in the same boat as the person that is taking them out. I guess I'm pointing this out to point out that I accept some of the conditions for why people are wanting abortion to be accepted, and in the right conditions, I would do it myself. But in a society, I don't think it should be accepted.
So, would I be right in summarizing your position that it is immoral, but in some cases might be permissible?
Um, in a society, I don't think there's any cases that it should be permissible unless I was convinced that that society could not take in that child. And I don't mean couldn't as in when people argue about this topic, they say, oh, look how horrible foster care is or whatever. I just mean like it would have to be pretty. I don't know what level it would have to be, but yes, an example of where I'd call it permissible would be if I was on an island and there was food on this island, and I had 100 babies that I had to take care of that were on the island, and I had enough food to take care of myself and 15 of the babies, and I had magic pills, endless amounts of magic pills that could just quickly, humanely end a life. I would give a random 85 of those 100 babies the pill because I knew I could only take care of the 15, and I would quickly end their lives. And it doesn't matter to me that they're 6 months, 1 year old, or a month before birth. If I was in a situation where they're just going to suffer, I would take them out of their misery the same way I would anything suffering that can't be helped.
Got you. Couple of things. One thing is I want to acknowledge that we haven't yet talked about the mothers or the people who are carrying the fetus, right? We are still
Correct.
talking about the baby or the fetus right now and the rights of the fetus.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of things to push back on. One is sentience. What I mean, do you have some idea that at what point sentience occurs during gestation, or for the sake of let's say being consistent in your moral framework, would you grant that sentience starts at conception?
Oh no, definitely. My understanding is that sentience starts around 9 to 10 weeks.
uh, how would you, I mean, ho- I would like to know how you come to that conclusion.
I have not personally read the studies, and in a situation like this, when discussing this, I would always say that it would come down to whatever the scientific understandings are. So if I'm ever mistaken, then I would just be declaring that I'd be going along with whatever the understandings are. Watching a handful of debates with people that I know are very familiar with the studies, and they cite the studies in the debate descriptions. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Avi and Ask Yourself.
Yeah, I'm familiar
And a
with it.
few
Yeah.
other, yeah, whenever they discuss this topic, because the where they might differ from me is they think abortion should be up until sentience, so they have an 8 week cutoff because there's a 1 month buffer between the 8 week, or sorry, a 1 week buffer between the 8 week and the 9 week, because sentience is thought of as 9 weeks, from my understanding. I used to think that it was thought of as about 22 to 24, but from my understanding, 22 to 24 is when the fetus is viable. Where
Yes.
if it was born out, like if it was born that early, it could survive. But the sentience, and I don't know if the sentience is referring to all elements of sentience, because sentience refers to the ability to perceive and or feel. And so I don't know if there are elements at 9 weeks they can perceive but can't feel. I don't know if they can feel but not perceive. But supposedly sentience starts around 9 weeks. But
That's
I guess
interesting. Yeah.
that's just something
Yeah.
I could try to track down some studies and send it your way.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Usually, I think 8 weeks, that's 2 months, right? So,
Hmm.
first thing is these weeks are counted from the date of the last menstruation, not from actually the date of fertilization, right?
Yeah.
So when we say 8 weeks, it could be anywhere between. I mean, there's a wide margin there.
Yeah.
Second thing is an 8 week fetus is, I think, around the size of a dime or a quarter. I mean, maybe 2 inches. I don't know. It's very small. Uh, Most of the organ systems are just, I mean, I guess, beginning to form. uh, as far as I know, when I was practicing medicine, and from what my radiologists and gynecologists friends and the Indian law says, so the law was very clear. In fact, our law was passed in 1971. That was, I think, 2 years before Roe versus Wade. I think that was 73 in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So the MTP Act in India said that the cutoff was 20 weeks. And as long as, if you even if a mother comes and says, I'm 20 weeks pregnant, because of failed contraception, she was allowed to get an abortion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only problem is they didn't recognize this right for single women until last year, where they extended this to single women also, and they increased the cutoff to 24 weeks actually in some cases, where the woman's life is at risk. I think there's no upper limit when the woman's life is at risk or fetal viability is not there. But we are very liberal, and I think most of the general idea here in India, which is very different from the US because of the population here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the scale of the population here is staggering. It is unimaginable to anybody who's living in the West, the number of people here. So the government has been very lenient, and they always promoted a two-child policy. People were encouraged to get abortions. Maybe for some cultural issues, people did, but
Mm-hmm.
I would say that 20 to 24 weeks is a pretty reasonable cutoff.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, the problem is, you're right, viability is an issue. Between 24 and 32 weeks, it is uh, a toss of the coin, right? You might have an abortion and the fetus might start crying. uh, that could be a situation, but
Mm-hmm.
after 32 weeks, there is no doubt the fetus will be viable if there are no abnormalities. And then if the so my question is, you are not fine with even this 20-week cutoff?
Yeah, I view things as I've been convinced or I haven't. I don't view things as necessarily right or wrong. I
Yep.
imagine throughout the rest of my life I will just want to be convinced of things or not. So I have not been convinced of accepting any abortions. But what I do want to say is I think it could be interesting because a lot of times people will bring in reasons that if the situation was different, they might not accept it. So I'm guessing you accept abortion based on the bodily autonomy more than what's going on in a society. So I think for hypothetical sake, let's imagine we're not referring to India or the US. We're not referring to if there's so many people that we want to encourage people to have less children. Let's just imagine resources are fine, and the question is just, should it be acceptable and is it moral? Those two questions, without thinking, okay, if it's born, it might be poor or become a drug addict because it doesn't have good parents or anything like that. We could just to figure out if the act itself should be legal or immoral. I think that would be an interesting take because I feel like each of the different angles kind of gets away from things, because if somebody's argument is just straight up like, if this kid isn't wanted, it's going to have this horrible, miserable life. But then if you say, okay, well, what about a 1-month-old that isn't wanted, that is going to have a horrible, miserable life? We don't end it then. So that's clearly not the reason. That's just a reason why you might feel better about it, but it's not the reason. Okay, so let's get into the bodily autonomy element. I want to point out that I used to be very pro-choice. Maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, somewhere in there. I used to be very pro-choice, and here is my argument for pro-choice. I think it's always best to steel man your argument and to always hear the best sides. But if I was walking down the street and I came across a person dying on the street, and the only thing I had to do to save that person's life is to pluck out one beard hair, I do not think I should be legally obligated to do that. Personally, morally, I think I should. If I saw somebody else do that and not pluck the beard hair, I wouldn't be friends with them. But legally, I don't think I should have to pluck that beard hair because I shouldn't have to do anything I don't want to do just for others. There are loose, complicated things like if a child was drowning in a small puddle and you had to do little effort to get them out, maybe there should be some legal obligation. But essentially, for the most part, I don't think I should have to do anything. So that's why I've always been pro-choice. I don't think anybody owes anybody anything. What led me to being not pro-choice, and then I'll just explain this and have you counter it, is I imagine this hypothetical where two people are hanging out. Let's say me and you are hanging out, and I have a hole in my hand. It's just an empty hole in my hand. And this is not an analogy for sex at all, but I have a hole in my hand, and me and you are hanging out, and I just grab your hand. You don't pull back because it's just you don't think anything's too weird. But I take your finger and I put your finger in the hole in my hand, and then it fuses together. So I did this without your permission. I put your finger in my hand, and it fuses together. And we find out that the only way to remove us from each other is to cut off my hand or to cut off your finger. In my mind, it's obvious that what we do is we cut off my hand because I put you there. I did this against your will, and we don't even have to go over if I knew what would happen or not. I did this action against your will, and I put you there. Do you agree that we would cut off my hand?
So I was forced to put my finger in the hole, and the fusion happened because of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Answer is
So,
yes.
okay. So that idea led me to being pro-life for the most part with in almost all cases. The only thing that would not affect that I can think of at all actually is rape. So if a human exists, we can decide when we think that human is valuable. But if a human exists and you think it has some value, as in what I mean by that is if in the future we got to the point where humans were grown in a lab, a couple that want a baby, they come in, they bring their egg, they bring their sperm, doctor makes conception happen, and then basically grows the baby in a lab. You show up 9 months later, you pick up your baby. Whenever you would say that baby is valuable in that case, in that future where nobody has them in their body, if you say, oh, it's sentient, oh, it's 20 weeks, it's 24 weeks, at whatever point you say the baby is valuable, then I would say inside the mother or not, if the mother made the human, I'll stop saying baby, if the mother made the human dependent on her, then I would say that she has no right to terminate it. And there's probably other elements of like neglect as well.
Okay. So I have one question. Do you still believe in the uh, now, considering your views have changed over the last 4 years,
Hmm.
if you were walking down the street now and somebody was dying and all you had to do was, let's say, shave your beard,
Hmm.
would you be obliged to do it now?
I don't think I should legally have to. I would do it, of course. Yeah, I would do all
Yeah,
kinds of
but
things.
but you is it immoral if you don't shave your beard?
Immoral. No. It's complicated. It depends on what one means by immoral. How much should one have to sacrifice for another? At some point, there's some arbitrary line. Um, I'm not a fan of it. I don't know. I don't think I would call it immoral. I don't know. I don't know.
All right. So the question is, if you're talking about pre-viable fetuses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, so, according to your analogy, it is the mother's responsibility that she caused the fetus to uh, happen in the first place, and she made the fetus dependent on her,
Yeah.
right? That is your argument. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. I would say that if you think that yeah, it is not legally permissible to shave your head for a random stranger,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to oblige any woman to uh, donate her organs or her blood or her tissue for a fetus, because of a couple of things. One thing is, most of the women I know, in fact, all of them, nobody uses abortion as a form of birth control, right? Everybody who has come for abortion has come because something has gone wrong, or
Mm-hmm.
because of failed contraception, or because the act of intercourse was non-consensual. So, in none of these cases was consent there. In some cases, consent was given initially, then withdrawn. So, in all these cases, my position is a person, as you said, it is based on bodily autonomy. We can take it out of India or any context of any country, but I firmly believe that a woman is not obliged to give her organs, her tissue, her blood to sustain a being which is entirely dependent on her. Now, there's a couple of things. Once the baby is born, right? Both the parents, let's say they have consented to have a baby, and a baby is born. Once a baby is born, if the mother doesn't feed the kid, the father can feed the kid. They can feed. I mean, there is no. We know that you can have uh, non-vegan food at any stage in your life and development. So after birth, the responsibility is divided. But my problem is, before birth, there is nothing other than the woman who is sustaining the kid,
Mm-hmm.
the human inside. I will
Yeah.
I will concede that it is human
Yeah.
from the time of a zygote. That is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think, at least before viability, no person should be forced or obliged to suffer or provide bodily resources for any other person, regardless of whether outside or inside. And inside is even worse, because the other person is entirely dependent on you
Mm-hmm.
in the first place. And before 24 weeks, I really don't think, since viability is not there, I don't think it should be even, I mean, legally speaking, it should be absolutely permissible.
Okay.
After 24
Oh.
weeks, if let's say I was a doctor and somebody came to me at 27 weeks and said, look, I don't want to have this kid, then maybe I will have a conversation, I will take a second opinion, maybe I'll even try to convince her to at least hang on for 4 more weeks if there is no problem. I mean, if there is no direct or implication on her health, I would rather wait till we are sure that the fetus is viable and bring the fetus out and make sure the system, assuming there's a system that takes care of this. But before viability, I do not think any person should be forced to make such a choice, or should be forced to carry it out to term. I don't see, because the consequences, yeah, I'm using that word, the
Mm-hmm.
consequences of not doing that are really, really terrible.
Yeah. Okay. So, if let's say I walked up to a person dying on the street, and they're starving to death, and I have food. Do you think I should be legally obligated to feed them? If I'm just a random stranger, I'm not part of the government or anything.
You're not legally obligated to do anything.
Okay. Not like what the current law is, but just you don't think I should be legally obligated to, right?
No, I
Okay.
mean, it is, yeah.
Okay. If I have a kid, if me and my wife have a kid and we go home and that kid's starving to death and we choose not to feed it, should we be legally obligated to, where if it dies, we get in legal trouble?
Yes.
Okay. I
you
just want
you
to.
are you have consented, you have brought a kid into this world,
Yeah.
you are legally I mean, forget about legality,
Yeah.
you have to take care of the child.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I just wanted to separate that obligation when it
Yeah.
comes to like neglect. I'm currently writing a book about putting together a society, and one of the most complicated elements of it is the fact of the idea of a child kind of being owned essentially by its parents until it's an adult. So figuring out at what point neglect affects things, because I think with adults you don't want to violate negative rights, but when it comes to the idea of neglecting an adult, it's complicated. But it's different with a child. So now what I want to do is I want to counter an element you said about using your body for that child. So let's say me and my wife and our baby are in a cabin and it gets snowed in. We're stuck in that cabin, and let's say in this hypothetical, so my wife has breast milk and the baby can drink breast milk, but the whatever food is there for me and my wife to have, the baby cannot eat. I can't think of an example right now, but let's just say the baby cannot consume it. If my wife decides, I don't want to use my body, I don't want to feed this baby, I don't even care if this baby still lives anymore. Essentially, somebody that would want to put their baby up for adoption or wouldn't mind a day before birth abortion or something. If if my wife knew for a fact that like in a year or 6 months or something that we were going to be, the snow was going to melt and we were going to be rescued from this place, if she knew that it was going to be like somewhere around that amount of time and she refuses to feed the baby the breast milk, should she be in trouble in that case?
No.
No. Interesting. Okay.
I mean, that's a hypothetical. What would you do?
What would I do? Oh, I I feel like she should be obligated. I feel like the neglect of keeping your child alive when you have the means to. If you are the parent, you're the one legally in charge of this.
But what if
This
you are going to die, right? I mean, that was
okay.
the other alternative.
Oh no, we're not going to die. My wife's going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. We have all the food in the world, but the only
Oh, yeah,
food.
then you are obliged to feed the kid. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. The only
Thank God.
food. Okay, so the only food to feed the baby is the breast milk.
Yeah, yeah.
I was kind of challenging this idea that because if somebody doesn't want to give their breast milk, they can put the baby up for adoption. But if you're
Yeah.
stuck in this situation, you kind of are forced to. And so, as far as neglect goes, because I view abortion doesn't usually get talked about as neglect, but I view a big part of it, especially if you made that human dependent on you. So all cases outside of rape, that any actions you do are going to be some form of neglect. So how do you justify that idea of a woman being forced to use her body to feed the baby?
Yeah, because when you have a baby, you have agreed to carry the baby for 9 months and you have agreed to take care of the baby. If you didn't want the baby, you could have chosen rather, when you were pregnant. And since I said, I mean, medical termination of pregnancy should be allowed. Uh, there is a fundamental difference between doing it when you are pregnant and something like neglect when you have actually had a kid and you have entered into a, again, I don't like, I have to use the word contract, saying that I have to take care of the kid.
Hmm.
But when it comes to pregnancy, when it comes to abortion, it is not that the mother has really wanted a kid and just as a whim changed her mind and said, I don't want the kid anymore. It
Hmm.
never happens like that,
Oh yeah,
right?
no, I agree. I just want to go off of the idea of should it be accepted? Because you were saying that it should be accepted to have an abortion like the day before birth, and so even
No,
though
that won't be an abortion. That will be a delivery. And I'm not advocating that the fetus should be killed when if it's viable. That is
oh, okay, I thought you were.
no,
So where's the
no,
legal
no.
where's the legal cutoff for you for being able to terminate that human before birth? Because I thought you said no cutoff.
No, see, there are two things here. One thing is, as I said, if somebody comes to me 28 weeks pregnant and said, "Look, I didn't know I was pregnant." In fact, there was a case recently where somebody didn't know they were pregnant and delivered a baby apparently
Hmm.
in the hospital bathroom and smothered it because out of shock. I don't know how
Hmm.
true this
I
is,
saw
but
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, something like that may happen. If somebody comes and tells me, "Look, I'm 27 weeks pregnant and I do not know what to do now. I would say just wait for 5 weeks. 32 is fine. The baby will be viable. It will be a medical termination of pregnancy, but it will be a delivery,
Hmm.
right? It will be a delivery. The fetus is viable. Whereas if a mother comes, let's say between 24 weeks, where it is absolutely legal, I would conduct the abortion. And even if, I think the current medical practices, in some cases, it does happen that you deliver what looks like a non-viable fetus, but it maybe starts crying or starts moving,
Hmm.
right? And I think there are medical procedures to put down the that fetus, but this is an exceptionally rare occurrence. And this I mean, these are highly marginal cases. So generally, that is the reason why I would have no I wouldn't put it as a cutoff. But if there is less than 24 weeks, I have absolutely no issue in terminating the pregnancy and basically terminating the life of the fetus also. Beyond that, uh, it, it becomes an issue of viability. And after 32 weeks, I think we are 100% sure the baby will be viable. So then, at any point of time, medical termination of pregnancy should be allowed. Whether the fetus is put down or not is a different topic.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So I guess I'm trying to understand which
I mean,
element.
it is not it. What doesn't happen is somebody delivering a 9 month, 8 month old baby and then killing it. That is not what happens.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why it matters, at least to each individual. So I'm trying to figure out that if part of the reason that we don't view the fetus as worth having protection is because of where it's at. Because you said like the responsibility is on the woman, not the parents. Like when it's at home and it's their body, they shouldn't have to use their body. If we're not allowing it to be terminated before it comes out of their body, because I mean, I know people that will say that you can terminate it even as it's coming out of the body.
Yes.
So I'm glad you don't feel that way, but I feel like since you don't feel that way, it can't be that the earlier stages you feel that way because of the bodily autonomy. It seems like the bodily autonomy must not affect it.
I did not understand the question. Can you rephrase it?
So a week before birth, I get that you're saying that you think it should not be terminated, but if it's inside that woman and she does not want it, she does not want a C-section, she does not want forced early labor, she does not want that child to exist, and it's inside her, it seems like the consistent argument would be to that she should be allowed to have it terminated, like end the life of it, and then do whatever you do. Whether she has to give birth to the dead fetus or whether you can like cut apart part of the body and pull it out. What is letting you feel comfortable telling her you can't do this and violating what it seems like bodily autonomy?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't ask her not to do it. This is all informed consent, right? If somebody says, somebody comes at 36 weeks and says I want this medical termination of pregnancy, then we will ask her, provide her all the consent possible, and the method is the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are going to do a C-section or induced labor. Either way, the method of terminating the pregnancy is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Now the only question is whether the fetus. I don't see why. Let's say the woman says, "I don't want the fetus to live,"
Mm-hmm.
right? Then I mean that is a that could be a genuine concern. Like why wouldn't you want the fetus to live if
Mm-hmm.
and we are living in an ideal society that can take care of that child, right?
Yeah.
We are nowhere close to that society. So it is one of the reasons why I think medical termination of pregnancy should be accessible at all times. That's the first thing. And yeah, so the thing is, the right of the woman to terminate the pregnancy is unequivocally, I mean, it's inalienable. You can't remove that, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the most you can do is give them all the information that they can, and they are reasonable. Everybody is reasonable. So I'm sure there could be a perfectly acceptable solution where the pregnancy is terminated and the baby is taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's the thing. And I guess maybe I should have specified this when we first started talking. The reason I like the idea of ignoring if the society can take care of it or not. Although I think that's a very important factor. Um, I like the idea, at least for abortion and for my sake of talking about it, I like the idea of figuring out if it should be acceptable and right or wrong in a world where it doesn't matter if you can take care of it or not. So that's why I want to leave that part out. I view it as more of a philosophical thing, which is also why I like to leave out the idea of does anybody do this? Because there's a difference between should something be permissible and does this happen? I know that like 90%, more than 90% of abortions, I believe, take place before 12 weeks. So I know that no matter what the number is, it's not as common and probably not a common thing. I just like figuring out with people where their cutoffs are, why they are. So it's definitely more of a philosophical conversation for me. So I imagine any hypothetical pregnant woman we're talking about is a billionaire. She has all the money in the world. And then also 5 feet from her house is an adoption center that has the greatest place to give all the babies to all the other billionaires. So we can leave out all the other elements of it. Okay, so you said that even if you try to convince this woman to not do this thing, if she says, it's still in my body, I want it dead, in your personal view, you find that that it should be legally acceptable, even in a perfect world, but that you personally don't find it morally acceptable. Is that right?
No. It should be legally allowed to terminate the pregnancy.
Yes.
That
But
says
but but
nothing about the viability of the fetus.
okay, yeah. So I'm saying that we can, let's say we know the fetus is perfectly viable. It's going to be
Yeah,
born the next day.
yeah.
But the woman, it's in her body. She can legally terminate it. Yes. And just curious, do you personally, you find that immoral, like the act she did, even if you're willing to carry it out for her?
I mean, if you're saying one day, then obviously there is no difference there. So we'll have to think of maybe 4 weeks. Uh, can I change the example to, let's say, 30 weeks pregnant?
What's wrong with one day?
Because one day before, if I'm going to do a C-section, if I do it one day before, nothing's going to change.
Um, yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. So like, so if one person was about to, like, let's say somebody, okay, let's say 30 weeks. Let's say somebody was 30 weeks pregnant and they wanted to abort it, and then somebody else is 30 weeks pregnant and they give birth early. So the baby that's about to be aborted is the exact same age and size and viable as the one that's born. The difference is it's inside the woman. Okay. And then, so you think this should be legally permissible. Okay. And then, but Akash, do you think that it is a moral act that she chose?
No, it's
Okay.
not immoral because
Oh, it's not immoral. Okay.
no, because these decisions are not made just like that. They are made with lot of thought and struggle, and people they struggle a lot before and after this. So I will respect their choice.
Okay. So do you think that even though it should be illegal, that the preemie baby, somebody takes the baby home and wants to end its life, um, you might feel that that's illegal, but would you say that that is not immoral because she made her choice?
No, that's a point, right? After I have a very clear distinguish differentiation from before birth and after birth,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because a lot of things change after birth. First thing is the baby is independent in the sense that it needs to be fed, but it is not solely dependent on the mother. That's the first thing. Second thing
Mm-hmm.
is, the if the mother has chosen to undergo I mean gestation for 9 months and then delivers a kid and then randomly changes her mind and wants to kill it, that is immoral, and that's immoral and legally illegal also. So
Mm-hmm.
that cannot be permitted. My arguments are all before the child is born, right? Now, as I said, marginal cases will be there, but if there's a genetic abnormality even detected even on 1 hour before pregnancy, I will terminate it. or at any point of time, if there's any problem with fetal viability or health of the mother, I will terminate it at any point of time. If there are socio-economic factors, although let's keep, if you I'll keep society out of it. Let's say it's a perfect society. If a woman chooses to terminate her pregnancy,
Mhm.
I will really, I mean, again, there is a process for this, right? In some places you have to take two permission from two doctors. There's a lot of discussion, but after all this, if the choice is made, then the choice of the mother has to be respected.
Okay. Okay. So let's look at one of the most famous uh, hypotheticals in abortion talk. I think Judith Butler came up with this, and it's the
Judith
famous.
Jarvis, I think, the violinist.
Oh, oh, okay. I'm mixing up two
Justin Judith
people.
Jarvis, I think that's her name.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah, the violinist argument. Okay, so the
Judith
idea.
Jarvis Thompson, sorry, but Judith Jarvis, I'm sure of. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, yeah. Judith
Hmm.
Butler must be somebody else. That's like a prominent feminist from the '60s or something. But anyways, okay. So the idea is that some people take the violin part doesn't matter, but let's just say that somebody takes you, a person, and then they take another person and hook that person up to them, and the person that's hooked up to them. If they get unhooked, they will die. So they're hooked up to basically be living off the other person. And then the question is, should the person that they're hooked up to that isn't going to die, should they be forced to keep them hooked up, right? Okay. Now the reason this doesn't work is because it's missing a key element. Let's change it a little bit. So the person that is not going to die, let's say they take somebody and hook them up to them. They force them hooked up to them. So they take the famous violinist and they hook them up to him. And if you unhook them, the famous violinist will die. And if you leave them together for 9 months, then you can unhook them and the famous violinist will be fine. It seems perfectly clear to me that legally you should not be able to unhook them.
Okay.
How do you feel?
Yeah, but in your hypothetical, I have consciously and with intent kidnapped the violinist, hooked
Yes.
myself up to him such that he cannot die. I mean that he
Yes.
cannot live without my this thing, and yeah, that's
Yes.
illegal and that's immoral. I mean there is
Okay. Now that
nobody. Yeah, but
Now that's
I
exactly what's happening with pregnancy. So you need to explain this to me.
yeah
If
yeah
a
yeah yeah.
if a woman has sex, gets pregnant, she put that there, made it dependent on her. 30 weeks in, you're saying it should be legal to terminate it. Now, what's the difference between that and the violinist?
Because women don't have sex to get pregnant. I mean, sex is a means of getting pregnant, but doesn't mean every time somebody has sex, it is to get pregnant, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to at least for humans, we need to decouple the act of sex from pregnancy.
Okay, but you don't think that the idea? Okay, well, okay. Let's talk in hypotheticals where the person that comes to you for the abortion says they got pregnant on purpose, but now they don't want to be pregnant.
Yeah. If I
Legal?
make the law, I have to follow it. Yes.
But can't the law have stipulations?
How would you ever establish? Okay, let's say the woman says, and that if I'm forced to continue this baby, I am going to become suicidal, right?
Yep.
There is absolutely no way to let's say determine that.
Uh,
In those cases, you have to believe the woman, right? Otherwise,
no.
the alternative is chaos.
It might be chaos, but it's not necessarily right. If I say I want to kill my neighbor, and if you don't let me kill my neighbor, I'm going to commit suicide. It's either right or it's wrong. If not killing that baby will lead her to suicide, it's only acceptable if it's acceptable without the suicide. Like, it's either right or it's wrong. So if it's wrong to kill my neighbor, then me feeling like I'm going to commit suicide if I don't get to should not have an effect on that. I don't think.
So you are saying that if in your hypothetical, you will commit suicide if you don't kill your neighbor.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
and
should I be
you are
legally allowed to?
no.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so if you shouldn't be legally
Because again,
allowed.
here is a question of intent, right? So
Mhm.
it is different with pregnancy. No mother, I believe, would want to kill or this thing, or based on something like pleasure, or based on the mood of the day, or no, that it doesn't happen.
Mhm.
Abortion is a very, very, very serious issue, and it is for that reason. And I know how seriously people take it, right? So
Mhm.
considering the seriousness with which people view abortion, considering the relative uh, rarity at which it occurs, right? A woman who has let's say two children, spends maybe 1.5% of her life being pregnant. Now that is a very you can consider it a significantly short or a significant long amount of time, but that is a lot of stress for the woman. It's a very serious decision to make, and my uh, my position is whatever her choices should be respected.
I get what you're saying, but I just think it would have to connect to these other situations we're looking at. If we're talking about the cabin where she's stuck in there and has the breast milk, we'd
Yeah,
have to look at each detail. She's using her body for the baby. She's stressed out. She would rather not have the baby.
I
She
don't
doesn't
think
want to
giving
wait nine
breast milk
months.
is analogous to having the child uh, in your
True.
body. I mean, they are entirely the scope and the level of medical complications in one is entirely, it's of a different scale than the breast milk situation there.
Yeah. Yeah. No. It's a fair point. It's definitely different. I just yeah, like I guess I just need to figure out the details of what makes it acceptable, and I definitely don't think the bodily autonomy thing works in any way. And one of my hypotheticals I like to use for this is imagine I had like a trap door in my stomach. And imagine people could be shrunk down, go big or small or whatever, and I shrink you down. So Akash, little Akash, I put inside this part of my stomach. I open a door and put you in, and then I go out into space, and I have a helmet on that's making me be able to breathe. If I put you in my stomach, I put you in that spot, and then I take you. So basically, the environment for you to survive is in my stomach because out in space you won't be able to breathe. Since I put you there, if I open the door, um, that I should not be allowed to do that because I put you in that situation. So you need to be able to be in the environment that will keep you alive. Since I made you dependent on that environment, dependent on me, and so on and so forth, so I'd have to come back. Um, so I do agree with you. There is probably some kind of limit. Would I feel different if women were pregnant for 30 years instead of 9 months? I don't know. It's complicated, but it seems like it must not be the bodily autonomy thing itself.
Okay, let me put it this way. When when you put me in the trapdoor and into the confined space,
Hmm.
uh, you were violating my bodily autonomy, right? My right to freedom. Let's say
Yes.
that's the right we have here.
Mhm.
Second thing is, it was entirely your because of you that I am stuck there. And if you are opening the trapdoor in space just with the intent of killing me, then that's what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
committing an act of killing, right?
Yes. Yes.
This is I don't find this exactly analogous to pregnancy again, because let me put it this way.
Intentional
If
pregnancy, by the way. I'm only comparing it to the women that come in and say, "I got pregnant on purpose." Okay, go on.
Yeah, but now they don't want to be pregnant anymore, right? So the intent
Correct.
is gone.
I'm only putting that out because if I put you in my stomach and I go to space, I'm only referring to where I intentionally put you there, not if I was doing an act where it could have happened and then you fell in there. I'm just for sake of argument, I intentionally put you in there, and the woman that we're making it analogous to, intentionally got pregnant.
Okay, now if somebody comes to me, let's say for the fourth time, right? They have had three pregnancies,
Okay.
and they come to me for a fourth time and said, okay, now I'm pregnant. I'm let's say 12 weeks pregnant, but I love getting pregnant and then destroying my fetuses,
Hmm.
right? Uh, Obviously, that's not that's not moral in any sense of the word.
Yeah.
That's not. I mean, so I mean, I wouldn't know what to do in such a situation because I'm obliged to legally to provide the abortion, but I
Uh-huh.
would also feel obliged to report this, at least send that person for counseling. Uh,
Yeah.
so that is one thing. Second thing is, I would like to put it this way: if I were, I think this is also a famous analogy where if I were driving a car and I intentionally run over somebody, right?
Hmm.
The person is dying due to exsanguination or blood loss. Now, if I legally, I am not obliged to do anything for that person. I might
Hmm.
go to jail, but nobody can force me to give blood or my kidney or anything to that person,
Yeah.
even if I intentionally run him over, right? Now,
Hmm.
legalities aside, morally I think it is morally incumbent upon them to help that person, maybe not at the cost of my life, but I really should do all that I can, because I of course, if I intentionally ran over him, then I wouldn't do anything anyway, but there should be some legal framework where maybe you can help. But just because I accidentally can run over somebody doesn't mean I should never get into the car.
Correct. Well, okay. And again, analyzing this hypothetical would depend on if it was the accident or not. But yes, I agree with the not getting the car thing, because in a society we know what cars are and we agree to this risk. So it's complicated, but yeah, if it's somebody else's fault, oftentimes the person at fault in a wreck makes it out fine, where the other person dies or is thoroughly harmed. So yeah, it's complicated. I see the reason for making it to where you're not obligated to fix the person that is harmed, even if they're harmed due to you. Similar to if you give birth and your kid ends up needing a kidney or something. I don't think you're obligated to give them this thing.
You're
Um,
not.
sorry, I don't think you should be morally obligated. Usually when I talk, I just refer to what I think should be or shouldn't be. But yeah, so I think this is where neglect comes in. Now, I think there should be
No,
elements
just
of
to complete the
yeah.
car. Sorry for
Hmm.
cutting off. I'll just complete the car point. So, for me, when it comes to medical termination of pregnancy, it is this: you've had intercourse, you have taken precautions, let's say,
Hmm.
which is what usually mostly happens. I mean, contraceptive
Hmm.
failure, or you just didn't know enough. I mean, you're too young, or you didn't know such things. So, in most of these cases, you know the risk somewhere in the back of your mind, but you don't absolutely acknowledge it during the act. Like whenever I get into a car, I don't actually acknowledge to myself that
Hmm.
okay, I'm not going to try to kill somebody today, because that's a heuristic. It's inside. So that is the same thing with intercourse, and that is the same thing with most abortions, which is my position, right? So
Hmm.
let's say pregnancy has happened, the mother cannot be obliged to give any part of her body for this other person, even if it is, I mean, especially since the other person is entirely dependent on her. And here again, I'm granting that it is a person, it is a human, it has rights.
Yeah. Well,
they
okay.
they they they, they or she or he are a human, they have rights, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. I agree with not giving the body, for the most part. I mean, again, there's neglect elements like the breastfeeding thing we were talking about. But yeah, like I don't think you should have to give the kidney. The problem is I don't agree with the killing itself, which is why there's a difference between, even though I think there should be neglect laws, I view it very differently if we were looking at an element of neglecting a fetus versus killing a fetus. Um, and so I think this is worth looking at, but again,
How
the
would you define neglecting a fetus?
Oh, I don't know if you. I don't know if you can. I I don't know if any forms of abortion are anything other than the act of killing. Um, one element of neglect would be maybe a lot of birth control, like preventing the fertilized egg to enter to get to the uterine wall. That might be a form of neglect versus killing. If I
So
understand correct.
you're against use of mifepristone, I mean birth control pills also.
Well, not necessarily. I think it's complicated, and for reasons that you've expressed about like overpopulation, that kind of thing, I lean towards being accepting of anything before the uterine wall has been reached. Um, and I wish there were forms of birth control. Well, I'm nervous about forms of birth control, anyways, just due to the hormonal effects. I've read a handful of studies on some downsides, but we're in a complicated world, so we gotta do what we gotta do. But I at this point I'm accepting of like the morning after pill. I'm accepting about anything that prevents the fertilized egg from getting to the uterine wall. But once it's reached the uterine wall, I feel at that point that's probably my personal current cutoff. Until I'm convinced
So
otherwise.
it is not the fertilization. It is when it uh, starts gestating in the.
In a perfect world, it's fertilization or singamy.
Okay.
But anyways, I kind of want to focus on this idea of because and it's partially my fault. We'll branch off to the real world, but this idea of the woman that got pregnant on purpose. She got pregnant on purpose. The baby's in her. It's a day before she's giving birth, or maybe let's say a week before she's giving birth, 1 week before giving birth. Um, and the baby's completely viable. If she would have given birth 2 weeks before that, the baby would have been fine, but it's even further along. Perfectly viable baby. She put it in there. She made it dependent on her. I get that it's hard for you to have a cutoff, but it doesn't seem to add up if any other case where we talk about dependency, like me putting you in my stomach or the violinist, where it's forced dependency. So let's figure out the exact detail of why not. And it seems to be something to do with the what the mother is offering by the baby being in her stomach is so much more drastic than the idea of the violinist being connected to the person. Like maybe it's the one tube. So in this case with the violinist, um, that woman that is the violinist is attached to can't even walk without the violinist. So that it might even be more of a burden, but maybe it's less wear and tear on the body. Me putting you in my stomach and taking you to space, there's no wear and tear there. So that I get that idea of saying pregnancy would be worse. But between let's just say the violinist situation of hooking somebody up and you saying legally you have to leave that violinist that you hooked up to you for 9 months, at what point of changing that hypothetical to get closer to a pregnancy makes you say that this baby, if it was born, that is perfectly viable and would be breathing, and you would call it a baby worth having rights outside of the body, at what point of what's happening inside that woman makes you feel different about that?
I have to think about this.
Mhm. Another way of
Right.
wording it, is
So
there
yeah.
anything involving the pregnancy that if you adjusted, you would say at this point, at that specific scenario, it should be illegal? Like if you hypothetically made it to where, okay, her body won't be affected, a bladder won't be affected, this, that, and the other, that you'd go, in this case, if she did it on purpose and she was this far along, in this case, she can't do it.
See, if if the mother wants intentionally to, I mean, has carried the baby for let's say 30 weeks, and then
Yep.
suddenly intentionally says that I would get lot of pleasure from terminating this pregnancy and killing this fetus.
Okay.
Right now,
Yeah.
I am legally obliged to at least listen to her out. I don't think, again, okay, let's stick to the hypothetical part. So you're asking me, yeah. See, actually, the problem with this is because of my profession, right? Very difficult for me to think of this in an abstract way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of yeah, flexibility.
Hmm.
Right. So, hmm. if we had technology that would definitely say that the fetus is viable, then I would definitely say once the fetus is viable, if there is requirement of termination of pregnancy from the woman, I would have to accede to her choice, terminate the pregnancy, and take care of the viable fetus. If the fetus is definitely not viable, then I have no problem in terminating the pregnancy immediately.
Okay. Wait, so this, I want to see if I heard that right. So 30 weeks pregnant, claims she did it on purpose, and we can have a machine that detects that the fetus is perfectly viable. You're saying in that rare situation, if you could pinpoint that into law, that she should legally not be able to get it.
No, no. Since if we have the technology to take care of that viable child,
Oh, to take care of it. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
in to pull it out of her right then? What do you mean take
Yeah,
care
do
of
a
it?
C-section or I mean, induced labor, perform a
Okay.
C-section,
So
terminate the
if
pregnancy,
wait,
and take care of the viable child.
but you said terminate the pregnancy.
Oh, terminating the pregnancy is ending the pregnancy. It does not mean killing the
Oh,
fetus.
okay, sorry. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry, Aisha. I think that
You're
we had to define that earlier,
No, that's
because
interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
medical termination of pregnancy is termination of pregnancy.
So at 30 weeks, she would be told if you don't want to be pregnant another 10 weeks and you are asking for to not be pregnant, you because of the circumstances, you're legally obligated to have these options and you would give all the best options and then she could choose one of those, but she couldn't choose the death. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool. Okay, cool.
I mean that's an ideal hypothetical. I mean that's what
Right? Yeah. And that's why I like having these kind of conversations because they help me figure out where I stand, why I stand on different things, and it's complicated. It's really complicated. Okay, because one thing you made a comment earlier, and I felt like I was going to walk myself into a trap, but I always have to remind myself there is no trap because I don't want my
no.
I don't want my no, well. Not only are you not intending a trap, but I don't want my stance to be right. If I all of a sudden realize I'm wrong, I want to go like, okay, I'm wrong here. So, yeah. Oh, part of your Kleenex got stuck to your nose.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. Um, I okay. So you were talking about something earlier involving organs, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, what if the process of pregnancy involved somebody having to like do things they don't have to do? So right now, when somebody's pregnant, they're pregnant. There's the downsides, and then they give birth. But like, what if they had to, like, at 5 months in, you have to remove a kidney, and then a couple months later, you have to put the kidney back? Would I feel that somebody should be obligated to do a whole bunch of different tasks to protect that baby? And just I'm trying to think if there's weird hypotheticals where I'd say, no, at this point you don't have to do all this stuff. And I guess it may be almost an opposite version of that. I challenged myself back in the day because I think intentional killing was the first thing I thought of as wrong. But what if you do something that's legally acceptable? Like, what if when you eat carrots, carrots would terminate a baby? Would I say that a typical abortion should be illegal, but nobody should lose their right to eat carrots, and then they could eat carrots if they want to terminate that baby? Um, and I think the closest thing that would come to is like the idea, which is probably thought of as neglect, which is like pregnant women drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to make that illegal. The libertarian in me wants things to not be illegal, but it's complicated when it comes to a downside, which is why I hate when people that are pro-choice view it as a fetus or not its own person, because if you call it not its own person, but then if you drink alcohol and it has effects on that not a person yet, how can you consider it not a person? So
No, no,
yeah.
if you are pregnant and you intend to carry it forward till childbirth, it is highly irresponsible to drink alcohol. And if you do that and you end up with a baby who has fetal alcohol syndrome, you will have to face the consequences, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can't do whatever you want and not face consequences. I mean,
Hmm.
nature has made sure that you will face consequences for whatever you are doing. So that is one thing. Second thing is regarding organ transplant. In your hypothetical, removing a kidney for 2 months and putting it back, no, nobody should be obliged to do that. I know that better than many people. So I don't even consider uh, my family obligated to give me their organs, right?
Hmm.
This has happened to me, right? I required a
Yeah.
kidney, but I did not agree to for a live donor. I had to wait for 5 years on dialysis to get a cadaveric kidney, which also failed. But the thing is, I am firmly 100% in the camp that nobody is obliged to give me organs or give anybody anything for anything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I was just trying to think because, like, in a sense, I think that the woman is obligated to let the baby be in the environment that it needs to be in, that it's already currently in. Um, but yeah, I think it is very different if you have to do certain acts. Now, if certain acts you do, like the drinking alcohol, negatively affect it, it makes sense to have those neglect laws. That's neglecting the baby. Um, and then the other element would be that since if you intentionally put it in your body, and therefore you are making it dependent on you, then you just can't harm it with things like alcohol, and you can't kill it, so it just stays there and grows. Um, so I guess I wonder if there's elements that would make me like it if it was known that the mother is like dying and terminating the baby would save the mother. I definitely lean towards doing that, terminating the baby and saving the mother. Um, but like, would I change my mind if 2 out of every 3 pregnancies ended in a mother's death or something like that? I mean, I guess the human race wouldn't continue if it was that
Yeah.
drastic, but if it was like maybe 1 in 3 ended with a woman's death, um, would I then change my mind? And I'd have to leave out all the ideas of if we need more humans to have a thriving society. None of that nonsense. Just like as far as rights go, I don't know. I don't know exactly how the outcome should affect a right or wrong act. And that's why I'm torn on it. And I guess that's why I'm not even usually referred to as a threshold deontologist. I'm just a deontologist because if it's wrong, if there is a negative right being affected, I just if you put that human there, you made it dependent on you. And if we declare that a human life is valuable and deserves protection, in my mind, a 30-week fetus inside the mother or a 30-week fetus outside the mother, not only are they equal, but I make them somewhat equal to a 1-year-old or so on and so forth. Um, Yeah, it's complicated. It's one of
So
the toughest things
interesting.
ever. Yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly, so one of the things was we could have taken this debate in an entirely different way by just arguing about whether about the personhood status or the humanness of the fetus, right? Of
Hmm.
the sentience level of the fetus. But for the sake of this conversation, I have considered at the beginning that even a zygote is a human with rights,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
so I'm not going to change that stance. I will still for the sake of this argument, I'll agree that even at the point of conception, fertilization, it is a human with rights. But as with this is not analogous to intentional crime or anything like that, because this is a perfect example of competing rights, right? You have two individuals with
Hmm.
competing rights and you have to choose one.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah, and so here my line is I choose the patient comes first, and the patient is the woman.
Yeah. Well, if we're talking about who's more valuable or who I care more about, I would say the woman. Yes. If it was a
Hmm.
burning building and I was either going to save a fetus or a woman, I'd save the woman. If it was going to be a 1-year-old or a 25-year-old woman, I would save the 25-year-old woman.
What about
So
100 fertilized embryos?
oh, I would always save the anything under 2 years old. I would always save the older.
Yeah. So then, why would you say that a woman is morally obligated to? Uh, I mean,
Because
if you're
it's not about death. If you have a baby in you and you just don't want to have it, now I get the fear if there's some health complications that can come with giving birth, but aside from that, if it's just the idea of the bodily autonomy, which I respect bodily autonomy highly, which is why I don't think I should pull a beard hair out to save a life. But if it's bodily, if somebody having their right to bodily autonomy ends another life, I would save the woman over the baby, but I would not let the baby's life end just because of the woman not wanting to pull out a hair.
Yeah. So
So
my question is, if we are saying that we would save the woman over, uh, I'm not talking about a baby that has been born.
yep.
You maybe you have three choices. You can either save the woman, you can save a 34-year-old viable fetus, or
Mhm.
you can save 100 24-year-old fertilized embryos, all of which can grow into functioning human beings.
Yeah, I don't think that number would matter to me. You could get the higher the number gets, I would still save the woman. At some point, you'd get to a number where I'd say the number's so high that you would need to destroy them because the society can't take care of them. If we're not talking about a society and we have endless resources, I would still say the woman. Um, just because of the stage of life. But I would say the same thing at various different, because that's another thing we didn't really go over. I talked about this only once before with somebody, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. But I was trying to think of why I value life, and for the most part, I don't know if value is the right word, but the reason I think laws should protect is selfish reasons. I want to survive. Now, I also care about others as well. It's not just selfish, but my main reason I want the society to protect people is for me. So if this random stranger I've never met before dies, some random person 40 years old just dies out of nowhere, let's say we don't have to think about their family, they have no family, nobody's going to miss them or whatever, and they died, I'm trying to think of why I would care if they died. And really, the only thing I can come up with, other than like I don't want people to die, but do I care? Like, does it matter to me? The only thing I can think of is because I know I want to exist, and I know I have a want for the future, and therefore I don't want to die. I imagine anybody of my species feels the same way. And so the only thing I can think of with that person that I care about is that they probably wanted to die. Maybe didn't want to die. And maybe there's a movie coming out next week that they want to watch and they don't get to watch that. Outside of that, the death of somebody I don't know almost means nothing to me. But if they were killed by our government, or if the government let somebody else do it, I would all of a sudden be concerned that I don't live in a society that protects me. So,
Got
yeah.
it. Yeah. So, do you know if is does the U.S. Constitution have anything about the right to life?
The right to life. I don't think so. I think individual laws about not being able to kill are just state to state.
Right, right. Because India has no such law. I mean, our fundamental rights are right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So those are the three things. So you're right. I also wouldn't really be able to answer why I value life, but let me posit this situation to you to illustrate why I find it difficult to have a cutoff. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I have. Let me know when you're running out of time. Right.
Yeah, I got
Just give
about
me 5 minutes.
10 minutes. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So let's say I have a hypothetical with 36 rooms, right?
Okay.
It's burning. Each room, the first room has a 1 week old fetus. Second room has 2 weeks, 3 weeks, like that. 36 rooms. The 36th room has a fully viable breathing baby. The 37th room has a woman.
Okay.
Now you can choose only one. You can only save one of them. So
Got
you have
it.
37 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, 36 of them contain fetuses of the respective age
Mm-hmm.
in weeks.
Yeah.
37th has a woman
Yeah. I think
or a
I would.
person, an adult male,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
whatever,
Uh, an adult.
adult.
Or somebody that's beyond birth age.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. No. I don't know when you compare like certain numbers to. Let's see if there was a okay because I would view how old was the fetus 30 weeks.
From 1 to 30, you have 36 fetuses.
Mm-hmm.
The first one in the first room is 1 week. Second
Oh,
room is
sorry. Okay,
second two
week. Yeah,
weeks.
yeah. Sorry. Okay, and you said I can only save one.
You have 36 fetuses and an adult human.
Mm-hmm.
Who will you say?
Oh yeah. No, I'll definitely save the woman.
Yeah. So this is the reason why I am not able to come up with a cutoff for the for when it's legally
Hmm.
permissible, right? So when
Here,
I
I'll
say it
I'll show
should,
you why you should. I'll show you why you should. Okay, you ready?
okay,
Let's
okay,
say you have two rooms, and one
yeah,
has a 25-year-old woman in it,
yeah,
and the other one has a 30-week-old fetus
yeah,
that was born early.
okay,
So this is not inside somebody. It's not even a hypothetical fetus that you should imagine is
yeah,
hypothetical. It is a preemie born 30 week old fetus. And it's
yeah,
just hanging out there. So we don't have the detail of it being inside of somebody. Okay. So you got two rooms. If you press button number 1, it will kill the baby. And this is a baby, not a fetus. It's a baby. It's a 30. It was gestational time was 30 weeks, but it's born. That will. Oh, and sorry, in the room. So you got the baby and the woman, and the woman is severely stressed out. You press the button 1, it'll kill the baby and it'll make the woman not stress out. Or you press button 2 and nothing changes, but maybe the woman will be not stressed out later. Maybe let's say she won't be stressed out in 10 weeks. Um, and so both, yeah. So anyways, which do you choose?
no, I mean, I would always, okay, just for avoiding stress for the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Then it is not morally permissible to press the button just for, let's say, not stressing out the woman for 2 months. But
Mm-hmm.
if the woman was expected to take care of the baby for the rest of her life or even for 5 years, then I would
Yeah. So
prefer
what?
I mean, choose the woman.
Okay. So let's say okay. Let's say it's the baby in room 2 is 35 weeks gestated. And the woman's in the other room, but the baby's not inside the woman. And we can factor in that this part can matter. If you press a button, if you don't press a button, then everything just the baby's there and it grows. And if you do press the button, then the baby dies. So I want to figure out what would need to happen for you to press the button to make the baby die? And we're not even going to factor in the idea of the baby being in the woman. What would need to keep happening to the woman? So she's going to be in there for 5 weeks. The baby's fine. It's gonna be healthy for 5 weeks. The woman's fine, healthy for 5 weeks. What would have to happen besides stress to make you choose to end the life? And obviously, this hypothetical doesn't match up perfectly to pregnancy because this baby's already born. But you could press the button to end the life of that one as soon as you think this 25-year-old woman is reaching a certain amount of something happening to her to bother you. Like, let's say her arm's going to get cut off. And the person that's about to cut off her arm, if you press the button and that baby dies, her arm doesn't get cut off. You can describe whatever you need to describe. But if stress doesn't make you press the button, what would make you press the button at the lowest level you can think of? If any, in this hypothetical, I don't even know if I'd do it for the arm.
Uh, what conditions need to be satisfied for me to not press the button or press the button? What was the question?
Yeah, so you get to sit there for 5 weeks, and you get to see her in the room and see this baby in the room, and they're both fine. For that 5 weeks, is there anything that could happen to her that you could make come to a stop if you kill this baby in the other room?
Well, any serious impediment to her health, that would
Mm-hmm.
immediately, I mean, including cutting off the arm, right? That no, I wouldn't. I would rather that the woman doesn't lose the arm.
Really?
Yeah,
That's wild. I mean, I realize instantly that this hypothetical only matters in a sense, but
yeah.
no, like I'm not even talking about imagining it being connected to abortion. I'm talking if right now I go get a random 25-year-old, put her in a room, and a random already born human that's born, and they were
Wait,
born
wait. To be clear, if you are saying that the woman's arm will be cut off, if I mean, I have to choose between the baby dying and the woman losing her arm.
yeah. And this is a random baby. It's not her baby. It's not in her. We're just talking a random baby that's 35 weeks. That it was a preemie that was born 5 weeks early.
But viable.
Yeah, it's viable. It's perfectly healthy, happy. It's not even in the NICU. It's just
I have to think about it because you are asking me to choose between life and dismemberment.
yeah. No, it's a wild one. I thought I was thinking that'd be obvious as I was saying it, and then I'm like, wait a minute. I don't even know if I would do that. Now, if we could detect that this baby was the cause of the arm coming off, maybe that would be a difference. But if it's just two random people, if they were in a fire, I would save the woman. But if it was just a matter of this action happening and I had to kill one to save the other, I don't know if any action would actually make me do it. Similar to if the trolley car was going towards her, would I derail it and make it go towards the baby? I wouldn't. If I could save one, I'd save her. If I could choose which one it went at, if it wasn't in a natural course, then I might choose. I might choose it to go at the baby. But between those actions, no, I just don't think I would.
Hmm. Interesting. These hypotheticals are bringing out the antenatal in me very strongly. Looks like
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. Well,
I'll have to
yeah.
think about it. Yeah,
Yeah. I imagine we'll have many more conversations, so we don't need to wrap up any details on that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
do want. I have one more question for you because I forgot to ask
Sure.
you. I brought up an example of a hypothetical, but I never asked you your thoughts on it. If in the future, and I don't think this needs to pertain to abortion. I'm just honestly curious about your thoughts in the future. If in the future we had endless resources, everything was fine, we could make all the babies in the world. There's no limit that matters. If we stop having babies the normal way and we do that thing where you take the sperm and the egg and an incubator basically, is there any point that it's acceptable or not acceptable to terminate that baby that's not needing to use a woman's body?
Yeah, but they are being grown for what purpose?
They're being grown for the people that want it. Let's imagine. I guess it could be any couple. It could be three people that are married. It could be a gay couple. It could be a straight couple. It could be an individual. Who knows? In the future, we might have all the money in the world, and one person can single raise somebody perfectly fine. Let's leave all that element out. They're being grown because the person that brought their egg and sperm and all that in, they want to grow a human.
Okay, I have a very clear stance on this.
Okay.
As long as the baby is not viable, you can terminate to your heart's content. But the moment it's viable, no, because
Viable
you
or
because
sentient?
viable.
Okay.
Because I don't know about there is no consensus about when a fetus develops sentience now, but if we are capable of growing fetuses in a lab, then our scope, breadth, and depth of knowledge about when fetuses develop sentience or when
Mhm.
they our viable is going to increase exponentially, and we'll be in a much better position to know that okay, at this point this fetus can survive outside. I have absolutely no clue about fetal pain or fetal pressure or fetal reactions, because these are
Hmm.
very nascent and still studied subjects. You can
For sure.
get wildly varying studies on whether they feel pain or they feel pleasure, or they're just instinctively reacting to the surroundings. We don't know all that, but in the case of lab grown fetuses, it will be very clear when they are viable. Before that, I am fine with terminating them. But
Okay.
that might be very controversial, but
No,
that's what my stance is.
I think a lot of people have that same stance. I've heard it said for sentience. I've heard it said for consciousness, and I've heard it said for viability. A lot of times those things link up. So I guess I would be curious. So if it is accurate that sentience is about 9 weeks and viability is about 20, 22-ish weeks, my question would be, what elements happening that changes your mind if we could detect brain waves to see that the baby is at 9 weeks is perceiving something somehow, whether it's hearing noises if they play music in this lab that grows the babies, if you were able to poke the baby to test it to see if it would flinch and react, um, would that sentience level, as far as you feel about sentience, would that change it, or would it still come down to the viability?
So my answer would be, if there was a technology which could tell you that a baby has a experience of self, right, has a subjective experience, then I would have to reevaluate most of my life's decisions, I guess.
Okay. Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think somewhere around there, because yeah, what I would say is similar to the random stranger that I can't think of much to care about. Um, it sounds horrible, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Especially a zygote or embryo before sentience, even if that sentience is at 9 weeks. I I don't care anything about it. I'm just torn on if in a society the society should protect the human. So it's a complicated mess. But even afterwards, I would say as the consciousness goes up, I start to care more. I've discussed this with Michael McCaffrey. It's kind of fascinating to think about. You should do this thought experiment when we're done talking.
Sure.
Imagine the fire situation where if there are two people in a fire and you could save one, try to narrow down what age of human you would save the most. So if there was a 20-year-old and a 90-year-old, you'd probably save the 20-year-old. In my mind, if there was a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, I would save the 5-year-old. So in that case, the experience, the 5-year-old, the consciousness and ability to think of a future, I would care more about the older one than the younger, the 5-year-old over the 1-year-old. But once they've reached a certain level of consciousness and experience, like a 20-year-old and a 90-year-old, I would say the 90-year-old has experienced so much life that I would actually prefer to save the younger one. And I'd be curious to figure out at what age, not that it matters, it's so arbitrary, but at what age, if you were running into a burning building and you had to save somebody based on age, what you would narrow it down to. And it's definitely a fetus, even the day before getting born, is nowhere near the top of the list for me. I might save that fetus over a 90-year-old or even an 80-year-old, but I would save a 60-year-old before a 1-year-old, I think. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, and so it sounds horrible when Peter Singer talks about like euthanizing
Yeah, he
children or
talks about
whatever.
infanticide also. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't I'm wanting to protect all the way to conception, but I am willing to admit, like I have kids. I I know that when it's just a 3 month old or a 6 month old, there's nothing going on there, and those babies are great. They're going to be something great. They should be protected at all costs. But if that 6 month old died, I would feel way different than if a 10-year-old died. So I think these are things worth thinking about and figuring out why we feel how we feel. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to question my value judgments and what metrics I'm going to use to assign more or less value to a certain age. I guess that's an
Yeah.
interesting thing to explore, right? So last thing,
Hmm.
so you have drawn a sort of uh, I don't know, deontologic line at when the zygote is implanted in the uterine wall. Am I right in saying that?
Currently legally uterine wall. Um,
Okay.
Overall, in a perfect world, which I think almost anything you ever figure out, the first thing you should figure out is how do you view it in a perfect world, and then after that, add in your real world experiences. In a perfect world, I would say Singami probably.
Okay, right. Because there could be a time in the future when you can just randomly take a cell from a from a adult male and a cell from any cell
Hmm.
from an adult female, and then fertilize them and create let's say a fetus, right?
Hmm.
uh, and I'm sure technology will progress to such an extent, but at that point the valuation of the fetus is going to drastically change. The valuation of what
Hmm.
a human life is, a human cell is, a human sperm is, those are going to drastically change as technology progresses. So I
Hmm.
think it's aware to I mean, it's good to be aware of where technology stands and revise your definitions accordingly.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, cool. Well, this is a great talk. I do
Ah,
got to hop off here because I got another talk
sure.
coming up in about 25 minutes. But yeah, let's talk again soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks
All
a lot,
right.
Karsan. Yeah.
Yep. Take
Yeah.
care.
See you.